Do you know the story of the first Thanksgiving? Well, let's discover that together with this book, The Mayflower. In 1620, the King of England expected his subjects to worship according to the laws of his church. But some people, called Puritans, believed that the Church of England was not their true faith. They prayed in secret, afraid they would be punished if the king found out. Some Puritans decided to leave England and cross the Atlantic Ocean. Far away in the New World, they hoped to worship without fear. Other adventurers, known as strangers, joined the Puritans on the voyage. Today we call these travelers Pilgrims. The Pilgrims rowed out to the Speedwell in the Mayflower, the ships that would transport them across the vast ocean, but water leaked into the Speedwell's planking. Some of the passengers decided to abandon the voyage. Others crowded aboard the Mayflower. 102 passengers, including children, prayed for fair winds when the Mayflower sailed alone on September 6, 1620. The Pilgrims didn't know what to expect as they reached their destination. Before them, only explorers and fishermen had undertaken such a dangerous voyage. The Mayflower was built to carry goods such as wine, textiles, and iron, not people. Between the decks, families were separated for privacy by wood dividers. They shared the damp, crowded space with chickens, goats, pigs, and 2 dogs. Barrels of hard biscuits, beef and fish preserved by salting, casks of cheese, sacks of flour, and gallons of vinegar were stowed in the hold at the bottom of the ship. Before the journey, the ship's master, Christopher Jones, had sailed the Mayflower only on short trading trips between England and Europe. Now he set a course across thousands of miles of ocean. Steady winds carried the Mayflower beyond sight of land. Weeks passed by. Below decks, children listened to stories by lantern light. After a month at sea, dark clouds gathered on the horizon. October was the start of the stormy season. The winds began to bolster, and the ship rose and fell. The slippery deck was not safe for passengers, but a young man grew restless and stepped outside for fresh air. Waves pounded the Mayflower's planking, and the ship lurched suddenly, and he tumbled into the sea. John Howland caught a rope trailing from the rigging. The Pilgrims declared it a miracle when the crew hauled him into safety. Billowing sails strained the masts. A main beam buckled and cracked. Water poured in, and Master Jones feared that the Mayflower might sink. Fortunately, the Pilgrims had brought a tool used to lift heavy objects. With the iron screw, the ship's carpenter was able to raise the beam into place. Finally, the sky cleared and winds calmed. After 65 days at sea, many pilgrims were sick. 2 people had died. But at daybreak on November 9th, 1620, weary faces smiled at the sight of land in the horizon. Elizabeth Hopkins cradled her son, born at sea, and named him Oceanus. Before the Pilgrims set foot ashore, they wrote down laws to govern themselves. Today, this document is known as the Mayflower Contract. Some pilgrims stayed aboard the ship while others explored the wilderness. By mid-December, they had chosen a place to settle, and the Mayflower anchored in Plymouth Harbor. The Pilgrims began building houses, but the snow was thick and many fell ill that first winter. On March 16th, 1620, a lone Indian appeared in the settlement. "Welcome, Englishmen," he said. Samoset had learned to speak English from fishermen. Squanto, another local Indian, came to live with the Pilgrims. He taught them how to plant corn and use fish to fertilize their fields. He introduced them to the powerful Wampanoag leader, Massasoit. Though they had suffered great hardship, the Pilgrims found that the freedom they had prayed for. On April 5th, 1621, Master Jones and his crew bid them farewell. The Mayflower set sail, homeward bound towards England. The fall Massasoit and 90 of his warriors joined the Pilgrims for 3 days of feasting. Together with the Wampanoag, the Pilgrims gave thanks and celebrated their first harvest in the New World. This is a timeline of the story. Now, this is a true story, and Even though it's kind of a really broad, quick overview, it's a pretty good idea of what really happened that first Thanksgiving.